안녕하세요. 반갑습니다. 영어로 발표하는 거죠. So, okay, so I was just clarifying if I speak present in English or Korean. I can do mixed languages, so I'm not sure to do that. So, 저는 자영치, 저는 최자영이고요. 저는 조지아 아틀란타에 있는 아틀란타에서 약 서부 쪽으로 동쪽으로 한 40분 정도 떨어져 있는 대학교에 있고요. 거기 케네스 주립대학이고. So I work at Kansas State University. That's about 40 minutes from the Atlanta downtown area, like northeast from Atlanta. So today I was told that I'm actually wanted to talk about one of my research areas about trilingual families, language and literacy practices in the U.S. But I'd like to begin with some introduction and how I got there. So I just looked at the program. I have 20 minutes here, so 25 minutes or so. I'm going to try to make it quick, maybe. So again, I'm a professor at TESOL. So I have TESOL, English Education Degrees, and Multilingual Literacy Education in the Department of Inclusive Education at Kansas State University. So my research really aims to unpack the ways in which language and culture, identity, and agency power, ideology, affect language and learning and teaching for immigrant and transnational children in and out of school context. Also, I'm a physical investigator for a grant project that was sponsored by the U.S. Department of Education recently, last year. Really try to nurture multilingual teachers to be certified teachers serving multilingual learners in the U.S. So, as I said, I'd like to give you some background about who I am in terms of my research areas and how I got to study these trilingual families in the U.S. So I have a lot of interest in, again, bilingual students' language and literacy practices, especially how they really negotiate identity as they engage with these language and literacy practices. So my dissertation research, which was a long time ago, looked at adolescent bilingual learners in a book club context. And then I continued on to talk about, to look at heritage language learners in a college classroom when I was teaching Korean as a Korean/heritage language in Atlanta. So I was really curious about how these heritage learners of Korean and Americans who grew up in the US start to really learn Korean language and culture and literacy through my courses that I was teaching and how they're negotiating their identities. So I have some work there published about that. And also because I'm an educator, I work with teachers. So my work also involves how to really prepare these teachers to work with multilingual learners in our schools. And also as a mother, I have two children, like you have your daughter. So I have a 12-year-old and I have a 9-year-old boy and girl. And I've been interested in looking at their trilingual language and literacy development from birth. So me trying to promote Korean language literacy at home, and also my husband from Iran trying to promote my husband's side family, Farsi. So Korean, Farsi being minoritized languages in the US, we've been trying to really nurture our children. So as a scholar, as a mother, as a professor, I have taken a lot of interest in really looking at my children's language and literacy practices. So I have some publications about that. So those are some of my earlier work. So some of my recent work, so my interest in working, just looking at my own children's trilingual development, kind of had me expand to look at other trilingual families in the US, how other families are doing in the US, and how they're supporting their own children. Because this is very difficult to do, especially when you're dealing with these heritage languages that are minoritized in the society. So my colleagues and I have looked at about 60 families actually in the US that are identified as trilingual families. And I have this publication there. And also with my wonderful colleague here, Shin Yu, and I have been studying bilingual education for immigrant children in South Korea as well. And lastly, we also have been working on this Korean English dual language immersion bilingual education program in the US. and how the children who are involved in this education and also the families and the teachers and administration really implement this program, the bilingual education program for children. So all of that, my work, my research have put me to, or have prepared me to work on this trilingual families in the US. So in this particular presentation, I'm going to focus on US trilingual families border thinking in the US, and also try to work, touch on also harmonious multilingualism, and I'll define what those are later. And all of that work came from actually our book project that we're working on that is under contract with the Multilingual Matters, where we interviewed about 60 families in the US and tried to really document their experiences with how they're supporting their children. And also part of that work is our the grant work that we completed for 2 years. And it's called Habitat Grant from Europe. We got funding for that work. And for that, actually, we were able to create this website where we documented 10 travelable families stories basically in this website. So you can visit the website as well as our YouTube channel. So all of that was the grant work that we worked on, Habitat Grant. So if you go to this website, you can actually see actual the videos of the children using those 3 languages in each one of the families, and we have family profiles for each, and you can also look at my own families and my colleagues' families as well, all tribal families in the US. So let me define the problems that kind of motivated me to investigate further in this topic. So we all know that there's linguistic colonialism and dominant language position hinder multilingualism in immigrant families. So this is across the board, no matter where the location is. So in the Korean context, this is Korean dominant society. So if you look at immigrant families, oftentimes they're not encouraged to speak or use their own language, so they have to use Korean. And then in the US context, it's English, very dominant English ideology and policies everywhere. And also, because of those policies and ideologies prevalent in our schools in the US, for example, what these multilingual families bring to the classroom, what these children bring to the classroom are often erased. And we don't value their practices and their knowledge. And so we have to really recognize where this family is coming from or what they're doing with their children in the home context, in the communities. So, and also when you're talking about bilingual families, you're talking about two languages here. So one heritage language maybe, and then the community language. But when you're talking about trilingual families, there are more languages involved, and that really complicates things. Because there are tensions between the families, between the languages in terms of the resources that are available for each language. And also there could be a lot of conflicts. It's really challenging to arrange things for children to really acquire these multiple languages. So strategies and ongoing efforts are required in the families. And also tensions are likely to arise because again, there are many languages and cultures involved. And trying to keep everything harmonious can be really challenging. And also children as they grow up, I don't know about your case, but as the children oftentimes grow up, they sometimes resist, what the parents have in mind for their language practices. So conflicts arise, and then maybe that affects their well-being, and also that affects between maybe parents too. They may have different ideologies and practices, values, so that creates tensions as well. So that affects their well-being as well. So, so these are some problems here. So I'm utilizing these 3 frameworks: border thinking, which is defined by Mignulo, that really challenges the ethnocentric and colonial legacies that marginalize non-Western knowledge, especially in education systems that prioritize English monolingualism. So through this lens, we can elevate the transnational parents of color as legitimate norms and really deconstruct colonialism. And another theory framework that I'm utilizing is harmonious bilingualism that is developed by D. Howard. And actually, she is our sponsor for the grant that we got. And we changed it to harmonious multilingualism because we're talking about not bilingualism, but multilingualism. So what that is a state of well-being in multilingual family settings. So again, as I explained about well-being a little bit earlier, so when the subjective well-being is not negatively affected by factors relating to bilingual setting, we can speak of harmonious bilingualism. So again, we try to achieve this harmonious multilingualism, but it's really challenging. It's hard. So these are the purposes of this talk or the study that I'm presenting today. So in this limited time that I have, I'm trying to show you a little bit of how these families, how these trilingual families in the US are resisting English-only ideologies, policies, and how they're really pushing back against these ideologies through their practices. And also look at how these families try to achieve harmonious health. So these are the research questions. So these are some of the literature review that I've consulted. So there's a lot of literature about how transnational families of color resisting linguistic colonialism. But a lot of research has been focused on, again, Latinx backgrounds, understandably in the US context. So there's not much research about diverse language groups, including trilingual families in the US. And as we all know you from Hungary, so in Europe, trilingualism is a norm in the European context. However, in the US, it's very, it's not a norm, and it's still the bilingual community trying to really have a stance on this. So it's not a norm in the US, but the population is increasing. Fast forward a little bit here. So the methodology, this is a qualitative case study, and we recruited participants, again, we had about 60 participants for this larger study, mostly through Facebook groups for multilingual families and how to raise multilingual children. And also when we recruited some participants through the channel, we also got introduced to more participants through their personal contacts as well. So in terms of data sources, we have a survey, and also we conducted 2 semi-structured interviews with each one of the participating family. So that was done virtually. So one interview was done, let's say 2 years ago, but then another one was done like a year and a half later. So there was a target between these 2 interviews. And also we asked the families to send us videos of their children utilizing these languages in different contexts. So we have the video data as well as artifacts of the children, the writing, and also the families have to show us how they conceptualize and materialize the harmonious multilingual families. And of course, email correspondence, and also we had a researcher journal as well. So in this presentation, I'm going to show you a few participants, again, out of many that we have. So you can see Fatina's family. She's Egyptian, living in California, with a husband who is Greek. So they have a boy, 9-year-old boy, who is fluent Arabic and Greek, also of course English. But now the boy is more dominant in Greek and English. And then another family, Rubio, living in Washington, and has 2 kids. So as you can see, actually, in this I'm showing you the families with younger children. And they are homeschooling their children. And then Rubio is Mexican, speaking Spanish, and then her wife is Indonesian. So the children are actively learning those 2 home languages plus English. And then you can see others. Flavia, living in the South Tennessee. Herself is Italian, speaking Italian and Sicilian, and then husband is Japanese. So 2 boys speak almost 3 languages as well. And then you can see the rest, like Yolanda's family. Yolanda is Mexican, speaking Spanish, and then husband is Dutch. So their 2 children also speak languages. So to analyze data, use the combination of open coding, and then multiple things are generated, and then there are multiple iterations of data analysis was conducted, and we conducted also member checking when we wrote on the manuscript interpretation of our findings. We checked it with the participants, and they gave us feedback, and we also had critical friends that we consulted for our interpretation and analysis of our findings. So again, because of the limited time, I'm not going to go into each one of those two research questions, but just simply for the first part, which was about how these, what are the linguistic borders these families experience, and then how these families counter the borders. So we found that they use discrete linguistic borders among languages agentively. So one of the ways for them to really survive and then strive and fight against that the monolingual borders was to really separate the languages discretely for them, for their children. So they really named, this is Indonesian, this is Spanish, and then in their minds, they're very separate entities. And that was a way for them to really keep those languages intact from English, for example. And then also the families challenged the monolingual borders for the and by making deliberate choices about educational institutions for their children. So, for example, some of the families resist sending their kids to daycare, English-speaking daycare, or kindergarten or elementary school, because they want to protect their heritage languages. So they decided to homeschool their children, for example. And also these families understood that these languages of their children fluctuate and they shift over time, and then they're okay with the unstable nature of this development. So they are really understanding of that development. Sometimes children might lose one of the languages or get weaker in one of the languages, but then later they might catch up, or there are shifts and fluctuations, and they're okay. They're embracing that. And also they recognize the bilingual borders really clearly as trilingual families. So they knew that a lot of discourse, major discourse, was centered on bilingual population, bilingual children. So oftentimes these trilingual families were categorized as bilingual families, bilingual children. And then they really tried to push back against it. And I don't know how much time we left. 5 minutes? Okay. So, and next, I'm going to talk about some data related to this harmonious multilingualism. So what we found was that in each family, mothers really play an important role in managing and maintaining language balance that contribute to harmonious multilingualism. And also the couples made strategic decisions about children's multilingual development. And they, beyond language development, they really try to foster love for heritage language, the culture, actually. And that was one of the ways for them to really try to achieve harmonious multilingualism. But also they understood that there is constant conflicts and frustrations and then frictions in trying to achieve that harmonious multilingualism in trilingual language. So to show you some of the data, for example, in this family, for example, the mothers play a role in maintaining or achieving that harmonious multilingualism. In our study, many mothers actually they try to learn the other heritage language of their spouse to keep the family, harmonious, family's harmonious multilingualism. Like in this case, the Yolanda, who is a Spanish speaker, tried to also learn Dutch, and she was speaking actually fluent. So in the family, knowing that Dutch was a more kind of weaker language for the children, because the children are going to the Spanish immersion school, she tried to really use Dutch with the kids and then the family together in the household instead of Spanish, for example. And so the families like Batenes, who is an Egyptian lady married to a Greek husband, they are trying to be really strategic about how to prepare their children, not to become just English dominant speakers, users. So they actually did study, they read about trilingual development as much as they can before they have their children. As I talked about, the families try to keep each language separate, discrete. So these are some of the examples where they try to do that. So like, for example, in this Italian mother's sign, she illustrated this, her family's brain to show that it works in Italian, English, and Japanese, and Sicilian, like discrete, separate entities like that. And then other examples here. This is an example of how this family, Egyptian and Greek family story, actually created this kind of photo collage to show his love for the Greek and then the Egyptian culture. And that was a way for them to show that they try to keep that harmonious multilingualism by really generate love for heritage culture for the child. But of course, there are conflicts and frustrations. So there are some internal conflicts, like this Fatene, who again is an Egyptian lady. She talked about how her son started out as a baby Arabic dominant, but then later on he switched to be, his Arabic got really weak to the point that he was responding only in English to her, not speaking Arabic anymore. But his Greek got really strong. So she had internal conflict, like, okay, maybe I didn't do a good job as my husband did. And then she felt a sense of kind of remorse and regret. So she had that conflict, but at the same time, she was happy with where her son has come so far with these 3 languages, because she knows that she understands that this journey is very difficult and challenging. And also herself, another example, her son now stops speaking Arabic to her. That really breaks her heart. But again, that's part of the journey. And it's an illustration of how difficult it is to achieve that harmonious multilingualism in these families. So what these findings show is just to focus on the harmonious multilingualism aspect, it's a continuous balancing act. So to really maintain, to have the child well-being in the families. And families make a lot of effort to resolve internal conflicts and struggles with children. So like in my own case with my children, as they are getting older, we struggle a lot with keeping their languages and cultures for them, all 3 language cultures. So it's a constant conflicts and struggles with children and with within our family. So what we see in this study is multilingual parents, especially mothers, play a foundational role as their children's first teachers in the heritage language and literacy development. And so it's important to acknowledge and then value this role in fostering harmonious multilingualism, and also what these families are doing, these rich experiences in their own context really has a lot to contribute to our educational practices. These are some of the selected references. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your interesting presentation, and my presentation will be connected to yours as well. I was wondering, how did you select the interviewees? Maybe you mentioned, but.
So we first identify them through personal contacts and through Facebook groups where these families are part of this multilingual, families, where how to raise multilingual children in the U.S. So we recruit them through those channels. Because we are working on a book where we have to get at least 50 to 60 participants for the book, we are trying to kind of cast a wider net over. So we also like to get sort of equal number of participants from different regions in the US, not just from one region, where, like, for example, like California, those states are considered as more liberal and multilingual, right? So we knew that we get a lot of participants from that, but we didn't want to have unlimited participants from that. So we try to have a balanced number of participants.
Thank you.
But it's been a struggle. Also, we try to get more participants from different backgrounds as well, like socioeconomic backgrounds, but that has been very difficult as well. And in order to get also participants from Native American participants, like, again, we reached out, tried many things, well, as it's not been really successful.
Fascinating presentation. Just had a question about the linguistic colonialism, and whether it may be applied in other contexts outside of the U.S. Say, for instance, Korea. I know that you also working about issues in Korea. So, because when you think about colonialism, you can have certain assumptions that you can make. In Korea, the legacy of colonialism might look very different. So I wonder if your use of colonialism to explicate what's happening in the U.S. context maybe also apply in Korea.
Yeah. Right question, thank you. So linguistic colonialism, like if you think about countries like India, so they're colonized, so their English was imposed upon them. So the concept of linguistic colonialism works in that context perfectly, right? However, if you think about other countries where English is used, whether in the community or as a dominant, maybe second, most popular or commonly accepted language, socially accepted language. Of course, the U.S. and the Korean contexts are different, but I think you can say from the aspect that the language, the dominant language is imposed upon people, I think we can utilize that concept in all these different contexts, including U.S. and then Korea. And also, as you know, Korea being, Korea, I think in general, I don't want to generalize, but in general, Korea accepts English as the language, as the additional language, right, in addition to Korean. So we don't really acknowledge other languages that are associated with the lower socioeconomic values, right? So it's only English that is widely accepted. So in that context,
나는 일단 다음 학기까지만 다음 학기 그거 수업 하나?
their languages
그거-
are not valid. Only Korean is imposed upon them, or English is similar to that. So I think in the context, we can say these immigrant populations in Korea also, they are forced to use Korean. They're forced to erase, their home languages and home cultures because they have to really abide by Korean only policies.
And my question would be, children, when they are very young, the language are just language surrounding them, they are very active. But then when they go to school, we cannot force them to speak the language, but then kids somehow prefer and accepting one dominant language. So that's what I also experienced. We live in Germany, and I read my children German text, so my wife Korean, and then but then when we have a vacation, let's say we are in Korea for 1 month, and then after a week, my children switch to Korean. So vice versa happened in Germany. So this is very natural thing. So given this context, I think that whether those languages are taught at the school setting. That is very crucial. Otherwise, you cannot keep what everything is
Right.
productive.
Exactly. So yeah, it's a universal phenomenon everywhere, unfortunately, right? So so that's why as educators it's important to really influence the policies and the practices in our schools so that other languages can be valued and validated and respected and encouraged other than just the dominant language of the society. Because I was just recently in Spain, for example, in Basque County, and they're dealing with Spanish and then Basque language, and of course I think English is also very dominant language as well. So before the Basque language became the official language for the Basque County, of course they experienced that linguistic colonialism, so their inclusive county used only Spanish. But then now they restored that. So in their schools, because the schools adopted Basque language as the official language. So they're able to bring back the almost like forgotten language in their community, made it official. So unless we try to do something like that, we cannot really preserve and maintain and encourage other minoritized languages in our communities.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So now we move to the second presentation by Dr. Shin Liu. The title of our presentation is a practice-based learning cycle to prepare culturally and linguistically responsive STEM teachers. This is what comes.
My name is Shin Lu, and thanks for this opportunity to share my work. My presentation is about teacher education for multilingual learners, and, through a practice-based learning to develop culturally and linguistically responsive STEM teachers. Let me begin by briefly introduce some some of the backgrounds of our project. So first, background is educational context. So number of multilingual learners is rapidly growing in the US K-12 schools. And while multilingual learners possess significant academic potential and social cultural assets, their potentials and social cultural assets have not been valued enough. So multilingual learners have not yet been adequately served in the US K-12 education. In this situation, most teachers in the US have received only limited preparation in working with multilingual learners. And many pre-service teachers in elementary education specifically feel less confident in teaching STEM subject than reading and literacy. So to develop pre-service teachers' ability to teach multilingual learners, culturally sustaining pedagogies and language-based approach to content instruction have been taught in many teacher education programs. So while pre-service teachers gain and acquire the knowledge and understanding how to work with multilingual learners, still pre-service teachers have had very limited opportunity to actually practice put their knowledge into their classrooms. So as you know, many pre-service teachers have that practice opportunity toward the end of teacher training program as a practicum or field experience. So a couple of scholars proposed practice-based teacher education. So our project tried to provide these practice opportunities in their coursework. Let me just
지금 얘기를
one more. Yeah, I hid one of the slide, but I decided to show it. So one of the local education contexts, this is where my school is located. It's Northwest Florida. It's pretty different from the South Florida. So we have very a small number of multilingual learners. So our school doesn't have a special practicum course for multilingual learners. So the students in elementary education program have the general practicum course, and then they have to have some tutoring, provide some tutoring for just 1 or 2 multilingual students. So our project wanted to provide more practice opportunity before they actually place in the local schools. And another background is research context. There has been some shifts from traditional views of language and science learning to contemporary views of language and science learning. The traditional perspectives of language learning consider content area language as being learned to focus on discrete elements of vocabulary and grammar. So the focus was on what language is. So when they teach the multilingual learners, they try to build a field. So build the background knowledge, so pre-teach vocabulary and provide some language support. However, in contemporary views on language learning, see the content area language as being learned through participation in social context. So the focus is on what language does and language in use. So language proficiency is not a prerequisite for content learning. Rather, it's an outcome of effective content learning. So instead of pre-teach, instead of multilingual learners learn the vocabulary or the grammatical structure before they actually learn content, as participating in the content classroom, participation in discussion or science practices, as a result, they can gain the language proficiency. Similar shifts occurred in science learning as well. So traditional perspectives of science learning, see the central focus was on canonical science knowledge defined by scientists and science educators. So many students in science classroom learned what scientists already discovered. So the focus was on what knowledge is. But in contemporary perspectives of science learning, central focus is on making sense of phenomena and solve the problems in similar ways to how scientists and engineers engage in their professional work. The focus is on what knowledge does and knowledge includes. So in the past, traditional views is students in science classroom kind of memorize the discoveries and science facts, but in the contemporary view, in recent the science classroom, the contemporary views of science learning really highlight the scientific practices and science sense making happening in science classroom. Also, when it comes to bringing students' culture, in traditional perspectives, students' culture was treated as kind of alternative conception of science concepts and science learning. However, in contemporary perspectives of science learning, all students are encouraged to leverage their cultural and linguistic resources and interest in identities towards learning science. So multilingual learners and all students, culture and language are treated as kind of main components in science learning. So these shifts has been well documented in research in science learning and language learning. However, in actual classrooms and teacher education training, these shifts have not been well implemented. So based on these contexts, our study aimed to provide more practice opportunity in teacher education program to develop pre-service teachers and culturally and linguistically sustaining STEM pedagogies using a practice-based learning cycle. And my presentation share some of the findings of how pre-service teachers' teaching practices for multilingual learners in science classroom have improved as a result of engaging in a practice-based learning cycle. We have two theoretical frameworks. So one is to inform the multilingual learners learning the content. So we adopted language-based approach to content instructions, 6 C's of support. So these frameworks identify 6 key components to teach multilingual learners. As you see, connection, culture, code breaking, challenge, community and collaboration, and classroom interaction. So connection means connecting science contents and STEM contents with students' lives and students' culture, students' lives and students' lived experiences. And culture is part of the connection, but this framework really highlighted students' culture. So incorporating some cultural aspects in the STEM, the content classrooms. And code breaking means unpacking language features and language functions needed for content learning. And challenge is maintain high rigor, high support classroom. So instead of watering down the rigor or simplifying the content, maintain the rigorous content lesson. And community and collaboration means providing some collaborative and cooperative learning opportunities. And classroom interaction means using lots of questioning skills help multilingual learners extend language repertoire and try out newly learned language. And this framework is applied in overall different content area classrooms. And we adapted this framework to be more STEM specific to reflect contemporary views of science learning. So we included some STEM language for our own 6 C's of support framework. And another framework guides the design and organization of students' learning and teaching practices. So we adopted a shift cycle, which is 5-phase process: prepare, interact, react, review, and reconsider. And the original shift cycle was used in some narrative-based simulation. So it provides some text and image or video prompts as a trigger point, and participants, pre-service teachers or in-service teachers have to respond with text and or the recorded audio. And we adapted these shifts for our the avatar teaching, avatar-based simulation. So in our project, in prepare phase, our pre-service teachers participate in module content and activities to learn the 6 C's of support. And interact phase, they teach avatar students in a simulated classroom. And then they react to their own teaching video. So they watch their own teaching video and critically reflect on their teaching. And then in review phase, they receive mentors' feedback and then they review a focused mentors' feedback. And then reconsider phase, they have to refine and revise their teaching to reteach the same scenario to the avatar students. So this is our practice-based learning cycle. So 5-shift cycle is repeated 4 times. So in baseline stage, in prepare phase, they have some orientation how the avatar students work and what are the 6 C's of supports very briefly. And then they teach avatar students in interact phase. So based on their prior knowledge, and they may take some diversity course, and also they took my course for just 4 months. So they have 4 weeks some coursework. So based on their prior knowledge, they teach avatar students to just gauge their baseline pedagogies. And then they watch their video and then react as a self-assessment. And then they receive mentors' feedback and review the mentors' feedback. and then refine and revise their lesson plans to reteach the same lesson for the avatar students. And then module A in prepare phase, they learn 4 C's of support first. And then they apply the 4 C's of support in teaching avatar students, and then react and review, and then reconsider their lesson plans to reteach the avatar students. And then module B in prepare, they learned 2 remaining C's of support, and then interact with avatar students, by applying these 2 C's they learned in module B, and then react, review, and the final stage, they synthesize everything. They review all 6 C's of support and apply all 6 C's of support in teaching avatar students, and also self-assessment and receive the mentor's feedback. And all learning is delivered through the Canvas platform, and all teaching avatar students, they takes place in Avatar Lab, and then the feedback and self-assessment happens in all React platform. So I'm going to show these platforms. So these are the Canvas modules. So they have 4 modules: orientation module and module A. They learned these 4 C's first, and then module B, they learned these 2 C's of support, and synthesis module, they review all 6 C's of support. And to learn each C of support, we provide some description and application strategies, application example, usually the teaching video, and application scenario, and subject quiz and brainstorm ideas. So these are some of the examples. So they have some description and lots of strategies. And this is exemplary teaching video, one teacher apply connection. And then also we provide some application scenario as well. So we have some image, some hypothetical teacher teach the same topic, providing, applying the connection, culture, challenge, and community development, so that they can see what's in science classroom, teach one topic, how all 6 C's of supports can be applied. And there's some quiz and some space to brainstorm ideas for their own avatar teaching. And this is the avatar lab. So they teach 5 avatar students, and the student in the middle is the focal student named Dabi, and she's from Cambodia, and she's tested as a WIDA level 3, so intermediate English proficiency. And this avatar lab's AI controls the avatar's body language and facial expressions and lip synchronization. And there's a human interactant behind the scene. So one human interactant controls these 5 avatar students. So human is intervened, so their reaction is very responsive and very interactive. And this is the science scenario we provide our pre-service teachers. So we really want them to understand the contemporary use of science learning. So not, instead of teaching science vocabulary or just fact-based science lesson, we want them to engage avatar students in analyze the data and compare the data sets to find a pattern, and also interpret some of the graphics, which is really important in science lesson, and connected to the natural phenomenon, the movement of the moon, and also daylight, day and the direction of shadows and day and light, and connected to the seasonal change. And we also developed a scoring rubric to facilitate self-assessment and feedback process. So we have 4 levels, and also we provide some examples of what's developing level the lesson looks like. And we provide 1 example for math and 1 example for science. Because when we initially proposed this project, we were very ambitious. So we plan to just develop everything for science 1 semester and develop everything for math the next semester. But we keep revising and refining science materials, we never make a transition to math until the end of the project. So that's why we have some of our framework and rubric has math components, but our teaching materials are all science. If we have another grant, then we can make some math. Okay, and this is the GoReact video assessment platform. So first, we have 3 cohorts, and first cohort and second cohort, we provide some written feedback form. So pre-service teachers use this written feedback form for their self-assessment, and mentor provides their feedback in this written feedback form. But for third cohorts, we implement GoReact video the assessment tool. So in this platform, we have to create these 6 the visual markers, so which represents each C of support. So while pre-service teachers watching their own video, they have to click each C of support marker whenever they identify they applied one of the C of support. And more importantly, they can mark some missed opportunities as well. So they can mark departure or code breaking when they could have provided support, but they didn't. So which makes this feedback the self-assessment more critical. And once they complete their self-assessment, mentor provides their feedback directly on this platform. So they can mentor can respond to students, pre-service teachers' self-assessment and provides additional comments. So makes this feedback process become more active. And another advantage of this GoReact platform is that when we provide that written feedback form, some pre-service teachers kind of skip the step of rewatching their own video, because we all know how much we hate watching ourselves. So pre-service teachers just rely on their memory and complete their self-assessment. But this platform, they cannot, it's impossible to complete this self-assessment without watching their own video, because they have to click that the marker directly on the timeline. So it's impossible to avoid watching their own video. So it takes quite a long time to just introduce our project, but we have 3 cohorts. So 12 pre-service teachers were recruited as a first cohort, and 13 pre-service teachers recruited for second cohort, and 27 pre-service teachers were recruited for third cohort. And first and second cohorts, students were recruited in-person class, and the third cohort's pre-service teachers were recruited in online class. And first cohorts, we only asked them to teach 70 minutes, but they really want to extend the time. So second and third cohorts, pre-service teachers taught avatar students for 25 minutes. And we use mixed method. So we have some quantitative data and qualitative data. So quantitative data, we asked them to complete the survey, which play as a self-assessment. And we hired external evaluator. So they assess the students' teaching video without knowing which one is the first and which one is the last, to get more objective score. And as a qualitative data, we analyzed pre-service teachers' teaching video, and also we conducted some individual interviews and focus group interviews. So these are some of the findings. So this is first cohort, second cohort, and third cohort's data. And these are the blind scores score. The blue bars are the first teaching, baseline teaching, and the yellow bars are the last teaching, their fourth time teaching. So fortunately, we can see some growth. They all improved compared from their first teaching to the last teaching, and greatest improvements were in culture and code breaking. And we also compared blind scoring and self-reports. And we can see the similar pattern, but we also see the pre-service teachers were pretty generous about their vulnerability. So the self-reports shows a little higher scores. But this self-report is still important because it shows their improved confidence. And third cohorts, the third finding, we compared students, the video score, students recruited from in-person class and also online class. As you see, students, pre-service teachers who were recruited from the in-person class show a little bit higher scores. That's partly because when they meet Tuesday and Thursday, they share some of the ideas and strategies they actually used. So kind of collective learning happens in in-person class. That's why the in-person class pre-service teachers show a little bit higher video scores. Okay. The first finding is based on our analysis of the focal pre-service teachers' teaching videos. So these 3 focal students were volunteered for the individual interviews. So 3 similar background, 2 female students and 1 male students, and 2 students are in elementary education major and 1 student in math teaching major. And this is some general patterns when we analyze the 3 focal students teaching. So in baseline, pre-service teachers typically show some general and implicit understanding of the multilingual learner pedagogies. Their engagement is marked by vague attempts and uncertainty. So this space, baseline teaching space, where they just begin to explore and experiment the pedagogies to teach multilingual learners without clarity and without confidence. They implement something, but they were not sure it's really right or wrong. And while they are learning the 6 C's of supports in Module A and Module B, their pedagogy and their teaching practices become more specific and explicit, and they were able to deepen and extend their skills and some of the strategies to teach and engage the avatar students in science learning. And final stage, when they synthesize all 6 C's of supports, they demonstrate purposeful and focused application of the strategies. Their practices become more explicit, more consistent, and more regular. And they're not only refining their teaching strategies, but also doing so with a sense of professional confidence. So more specifically, what I mean by deepened culturally and linguistically sustained science pedagogies, the pre-service teachers were able to draw attention to social scientific issues. So beyond just targeting one particular culture, so the Bobby, the multilingual learner, is from Cambodia. So in the very baseline teaching, they only asked them whether about Cambodia. But later stages, they extended the concept of culture. So not just one particular ethnicity based on its culture, but it's more global issues and some lived experiences of students. So let me show some examples in the next slide. And they were able to raise awareness of disciplinary language. So closely integrated science sense making and practices with language use. Instead of pre-teaching vocabulary or sentence structure, they highlighted making hypotheses and participating in discussion, finding pattern, and what kind of language features they have to use for making hypotheses or finding a pattern and making the conclusion in science classroom. And they were able to expand these teaching practices for multilingual learners. So they were able to represent diverse cultures, and they were able to use increased array of resources. So one of the advantages of we teach the same lesson 4 times. If they teach the different topics multiple times, they may use just one type of resources multiple times. They bring just visuals of water cycle. They use some of the visual for other topics. But here, they have to teach the same lesson 4 times, so they have to diversify some of the resources and kinds of resources, and also enact a variety of subjects. So one example is Morgan. So in the baseline teaching, she just asked the weather of Cambodia in the beginning of science lesson. It's just a brainstorming and it's ice breaking. It's not really related to the science topic she's teaching. But in second module and the third teaching and the last teaching, she was able to bring social scientific issues, some global warming. And last teaching, actually, she tried to connect it to students' lived experiences, to something close to their community. So she brought Florida coastal area to explain these global warming issues. And also she brought some daylight saving, which is recently occurred in Florida at that time. And in baseline teaching, she just asked some simple questions to Dabi. She doesn't know how to include the multilingual students in science classroom, so make it really simple question to the focal student. But in module A and module B and later stage, she tried to extend the conversation with Dabi and ask more follow-up questions and more challenging questions as well. Some prediction questions and questions for to ask her rationale and more attention to Dabi. In the first baseline teaching, they were very not confident to interact with Dabi. They don't know how to work with multilingual learner. But later stage, they were more confident and engaged Dabi and making more time to interact with them. And in terms of the resources, they were try to bring more and more diverse resources. So some like in the beginning, just visual, but they find some interactive websites, additional data sets, and multiple visuals and map of Florida. And attempt to in language use, she explains some pronunciation. So she doesn't know how to implement scientific language. So she just implicitly used some science vocabulary and science practices and highlights tilts and prediction. But later stage, she was able to explain in science classroom, we use tilts instead of leaning. So sure, kind of compare the everyday language and scientific language as well. These are some examples, the data sets and sentence starters she teach in making hypotheses and how to report the pattern they found. This is Morgan's interview data. So our findings show some significant impacts of our practice-based learning cycle using mixed reality simulation on pre-service teachers' improvement of STEM teaching for multilingual learners. It's not just providing just one-time simulation practice opportunity. Our practice-based learning cycle purposefully distributed multiple reteaching opportunities with critical reflection and feedback processes. And also, we can see pre-service teachers' changes towards more culturally and linguistically sustaining STEM practices reflecting contemporary views of science and language. So beyond teaching the science vocabulary or fact-based science lesson, they see we were able to see deeper awareness of disciplinary language use closely integrated with science sense making and practices. And also we were able to see our pre-service teachers' extended understanding of culture from simply addressing particular cultural reference for a particular multilingual learner's background or cultural tradition to community-based, more social scientific issues-based, and also students' lived experiences. However, despite heightened awareness and enactment of disciplinary language use and culture, pre-service teachers have not reached appropriation of multilingualism and translanguage. So other than bringing in-depth part of key vocabulary in Davi's home language occasionally, when explaining some key terms, translanguage practices were largely absent. For example, Davi was not included to respond orally in Cambodian language Khmer, or write her understanding in Khmer or other modes, or access course materials or lesson summaries in her home language. And this is partly because of the setting of mixed reality simulation. There's only one multilingual students and others are all monolingual English speakers. So for future research, there's a need for ongoing discussion and efforts to sustain and expand and refine these practice opportunities. So developing more realistic simulated classroom with more multilingual learners to apply so that pre-service teachers can apply a full repertoire of teaching practices for multilingual learners and creating more diverse avatars and using non-human avatars to lead to humanizing pedagogies, which means some critics is that these avatar teaching can reinforce some of the stereotypes of the multilingual learner. So how to lead to humanizing pedagogies is another point we have to continue the discussion. And also improving sustainability. This avatar lab is very expensive. So without grant money and other funding, it's not sustainable. So how to reduce the cost is some discussion needs ongoing discussion. So we have blog posts, which include some of the videos of our project. So you can get it later. And this is funded by National Science Foundation. And these are our co-researchers. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation. And if you have any questions, comments.
Thank you. So, question.
Thank you for the presentation. This was, I mean, we could tell it's a lot of work. Did a lot of work for this project. Yeah, it was really great. I learned a lot, and I'm familiar with the avatars. In our institution, we also use avatars. And in my courses, I use avatars as well with kids. So one question that I had was, I may utilize the 6 Cs as a scoring rubric and also as a framework. But I think in my experience, like I use the Vida's 8 components. So when I had students to self-evaluate their own teaching with avatars by using the Vida's 8 components, I mean, I think yours was different because you had them teach the same lesson 4 times and then you see a lot of improvement throughout. But in our case, we have them use, okay, so you look at, for example, the first reader component about building background knowledge. So then, so if the students actually check, okay, so ask questions, okay, how is weather in Cambodia? They try to build background knowledge of, right, try to make connections with the students with the content. Then the students would just say, check, I did it, like, and then, so I didn't really think that, so we were able to cover really superficial level of, I guess, the understanding and learning through the rubric as well as with their engagement with the avatars. So I wondered how, I mean, I think it was obvious in your presentation, but how deeply were you able to really have students engage with through the rubrics and the framework they use?
So that was our main focus when we developed the learning materials and also the rubric. So we tried really hard to avoid that checklist type of assessment. So when we developed our rubric, we provide lots of examples and and also the contemporary views of language learning and language science learning and language learning. That's the key points in our teaching materials. So we give lots of examples. And also in the rubric, there's some example of what developing level teaching looks like and what's the highlights. We keep highlights those points when in rubric and teaching materials, and also when mentor provide a feedback. So that's and we explicitly told them that we try not to, it's not like a checklist. One time just you dropped the Khmer language, it's not, you can't receive the high grades for that, something like that.
So I think it has to do with like definition culturally and linguistically responsive STEM teachers. I'm not sure what that exactly means in terms of like when do you know whether someone a pre-service teacher has sort of acquired competency as culturally linguistically responsive STEM teachers, given the limitations that you have outlined. I was, trying to search for signs of culturally responsive, examples of culturally responsive some materials that would signal that these pre-service teachers are culturally and linguistically responsive. And so I'm just trying to grapple with what that exactly means in context of operational these terms in practice.
Thanks for the comments. We probably have to kind of start with the operational, some definition of the terms. But when we manage this project, we have some conceptions that, as you said, the teachers who can work with multilingual learners and providing and developing some of the teaching materials to make the connections, apply these 6 C's of support. So providing, connecting students' lives with science content and bringing and connecting some cultural issues, social scientific issues with science, the science content, and unpacking and explaining the language features and language functions which is necessary to participate in science classrooms, and without simplifying science content for multilingual learners, maintaining and providing lots of support so that multilingual learners reach that grade level standard, and incorporating some collaborative and cooperative learning opportunities with other monolingual English speaking students, and providing, using and lots of questioning technique to help multilingual learners extend their language repertoire and improve their language in science classroom. So that's I admit that we probably need more the structured definition of that term, but we think these 6 C's of the teachers who were able to apply these 6 C's of support in content classrooms are culturally and linguistically responsive STEM teachers in our project.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so now we move on to the last speaker. So Dr. Lucy and Lucy. Her presentation has two parts. Part one is the introduction of data and our faculty and institute were actually some of us were there. And part two is called early childhood education in global context, research methods with the children.
Hello.
We are a little bit
Yeah, I tried to.
time now.
Yeah, okay. I tried to skip some. Okay, hello everyone. My name is Orsolya Andrödi, but you can call me Orsi, and I'm from the Eötvös Loránd University of Budapest. My daughter will pass you a leaflet about our university, so you can get some insights of the university in general. Let me talk about the university first, then I'll explain you about my research. I'll focus on two methods, what I usually use when I work with children and especially early learners. So about at the university, actually we are ranked among the 2% of the universities globally, and we have 2 training locations. Our headquarters is in Budapest, which is the capital of Hungary. You are might familiar with this fact, so I'm sorry. And we have over 8 campuses and 9 faculties. So basically, we are joking with that Budapest is our main campus. So you can travel within the campuses like ours. And the university was founded in 1635 by a famous cardinal. And ever since it has been working. So this is the first university in Hungary. You can see here some numbers. We have almost 40,000 students. Among them, about 10% of them are international students. Actually, the Hungarian government offers a specific scholarship for foreign students called Stipendium Hungaricum. So we have students from all over the world, but mostly from Southeast Asia and also Africa. And some Europeans. With Erasmus Fund, you can travel within Europe, and I'm here also with this Erasmus Fund because in the past 3 or 4 years, we had an option to apply to travel outside of the European Union, so not program countries, but with project countries, and it enhances the internationalization. So we are very happy to be here. You can see here that there are over 70 languages are taught, and we have a beautiful Sejong Institute at ELTE. So there, the Korean Cultural Institute is within ELTE as well. And we also have a Korean department. And you can see here some of the buildings. And I mentioned the research. You can see here some of the rankings. Also, education is just about the 200. There is a new Nobel laureate. He just won the Nobel laureate last year, called Ferenc Krausz. He won it as a physicist. So also you can see here international relations, And I'm happy to announce that we also have an MOU with the Essener University, I mean, our institute and ELTE in general. And you can see here some of the cultural insights. We have a choir, we have a beautiful library. It looks like a Hogwarts-ish a little bit. It's a very beautiful place. We also have an observatory and very nice parks. So in conclusion, ELTE has a large number of students, and we provide some services for the international students as well. And I'm from the Institute of Intercultural Psychology and Education. We run a so-called social integration master, and we also have a PhD program for intercultural relations and intercultural education. And Lana is the head of our institute. You might know her. I know some of the professors have very good connection with her. So I mentioned the scholarship already, so let me talk about my research more in detail. I'm an education scientist, but my first major was linguistic and cultural relations, cultural management. And also, thank you so much. And also education with early childhood track. So that's why I'm interested in working with children. I used to live in Japan. I lived there for 5 years, and I was international kindergarten teacher there. So this is my background, and let me talk about some methods what we use when we research with children. One is called iconography as a research method. So it's a visual analysis method, and usually you can use it for analyzing pictures, any kind of visuals, photos, videos, animated movies, and paintings, woodblock prints, ukiyo-es, whatever. So very various kind of sources you can analyze with. And the other one is is a linguistic method called word association experiment, what I usually do with linguists. I think in investigating in interdisciplinary research is very important. In the past decades, we realized that if we work closely together with some other researchers from a different field, we might understand some situations deeper. We can create also another discipline, what is beyond the traditional disciplines. And also it's very stimulative and inspiring for the researchers as well. So about theoretical background, if I would ask you what childhood is, probably you would answer, okay, it's a stage of life. And it's very important, a very sensitive period of our life. But we would define differently based on our experiences, our childhood memories. So by analyzing, for example, this picture, we can see that in the medievals in Europe, children were treated differently, and probably they became adults much earlier than nowadays. Usually boys became adults around 13 or 14, and the girls based on their biological maturity around 12, 13. So childhood can be considered as a construction. It's also a sociological phenomena, just like other constructions. So children must be seen as active in determining their own life. So based on some British sociologists, we can see a childhood as considered in conjunction with others. How can we understand a certain narrative of a childhood? We can, for example, analyze pictures, as I mentioned, and we can create a narrative or a conception of a childhood for that certain source. What is iconography? Iconography is a visual analysis method, and it was originally a subdiscipline of art history. So we borrowed from the art historians, and it believes that social relations can be coded in pictures, for example, paintings, and it can break the silence. So we can understand more, and we can read certain images, because pictures have the capacity to convey information that cannot be coded in any other way. So here you can see some methods, what I usually use. Originally, as I mentioned, Erwin Panofsky and art historians created this step-by-step analysis. But if you want to use this, you might need some art historical background. So I try to find some other research methods. For example, made by Theo Abe's Japanese researchers, and he helped others to understand and categorize woodblock prints. A French researcher, Jean-Jacques Goutot, focused on the textual and visual elements and the encoding. Some German researchers, Ulrika Mitzner and Pilacci, tried to classify photos and understand the relation with the reality. And what I really suggest you, and I can share some insights, it's from Marco Collier, who is a visual anthropologist, and he let the researchers use their intuitions, and he believes that a serial analysis can help us to understand the situations, even if we use our intuition, because usually when we see a picture, we kind of have some impressions first. And if we use this step-by-step method, we combine things, we measure things, and structure the picture. We try to find the elements, maybe interactions and the situations. We might understand deeper, but usually the first impression is very close to the direct meaning, what we analyze by the end. So let me talk about some examples. Let me share you some examples. For example, I analyzed medicine, surgical books from the 16th century. And by analyzing these documents, I realized that the value of the mother was less than the value of the children. For example, it was sure that if they use very basic cesarean section, the mother will die. And they choose sometimes because they wanted the child to live. And also giving birth was very risky adventure for the mothers. You can see here some examples, and also about breastfeeding, because I was searching for ordinary people, how they treated their children. And by analyzing these pictures, canonic pictures, Virgin Mary, and also Eve with Cain and Abel, we were not able to understand real life situations. But in search of the ordinary people, we, for example, didn't have any proof of wet nurses on the picture, because people believed that mothers sent away their children because they didn't love their children, but they loved because, for example, probably they couldn't feed their children. That's why they sent away. So in searching for these ordinary people, we could see the gestures of the mother and the child.
the loving gestures, how they were, for example, treating their children. Also, we can analyze some situations from the school. This picture was made by Peter Burwell the Elder, and it's about a donkey at the school. You can see over there, and probably he is the cleverest person in this picture. So it's a caricature from the 16th century, because in the Low Countries, in Netherlands, there were some schools. Okay, in Hungary, maybe schools didn't even exist that much. So if someone had an extra room, he could open a school. He didn't need any kind of certificates. So this one is a very critical perspective of the schools in the 16th century. You can see here some of the faces and the children. They are not reading at all, only the donkey is reading. So when we go into details, we can analyze the meaning of donkey as a symbol. It could be stupidity, stubbornness, slowness, laziness, and so on. But also, a donkey can lead some people without being conscious about this leading method. Because, for example, Virgin Mary was led by this donkey to Bethlehem. So if you go in detail, you can understand probably that donkey man, we need some changes. And without knowing it, he is leading us towards the right direction. You can see here some details. And there were some interesting stories in the 15th century, mirroring same stories. When we go in more detail, we can see some other depictions of the school. I compared some Japanese ukiyo-es with some paintings from Europe. And in both places, we can see that the teacher probably is not well trained because children are standing on the table over there and here as well. So it's interesting to compare the situations. Okay, later, there began some professional trainings for the teachers. And when I compared the Japanese and the European depictions, I could understand that Buddhism and Confucianism influenced the depictions as well. And in Western Europe, Christianity also influenced the painters and the idea as well. And it was interesting that in both places, I found the patron of the children. And yeah, so when we come to the results, we can see that by analyzing these pictures, we might understand situations deeper. And about the other research I promised you, it's with two Russian researchers who are working on the Sechenov University. So we used a similar theoretical background, and we added the linguistic perspective as well. So we created a comparative research, and we focused on 4 to 5 years olds and 10 12-year-olds children. It was an interdisciplinary research from the psycholinguistic perspective and the childhood studies. We tried to understand their concept of childhood, their worldview, and just to connect with our researchers here, it's very important to understand what is the meaning behind when you talk about one word, because there are certain words what cannot be translated to other languages. So the concept behind is different. So if we understand these deeper meanings, we might be able to communicate better or find a common ground for our communication. We also use this so-called shoulder-to-shoulder method, what is basically we sit down with children and try to initiate a conversation with them or just let them draw. And we sit shoulder to shoulder with the children as researchers. And after a while, like after 10, 15 minutes, they will open up, hopefully. And then we can start our interviews with them. We made 100 questionnaires in Moscow and Budapest in the same time. And I'll talk about these so-called stimuli. We focus on the uniqueness of the investigation is the focus of the children on themselves and the user about childhood, because we try to understand their concept about childhood, their narrative, how they see themselves, what is the definition of childhood according to them. All respondents were urban families and from kindergarten in Moscow and in Budapest. We asked them 27 questions based on 10 words. And half of these words were related to childhood. I will focus on those only. So for example, friend, family, childhood, play, and I will share that. So we have some universalistic results. The research confirmed as a universal characteristic that most children regard themselves as small version of adults. They consider playing as the most typical activity of childhood, practiced only, and it's very sad, I'm so sorry, practiced only during the childhood period. And then they realize adults don't play. So we must change this, I'm afraid. So we try to understand the differences between friend as a concept. In both regions, they understand that a friend is someone who plays with me, I mean as a child, and a kind or good person usually. So these are the two things what they realize mostly. We analyzed with certain software linguistically about child. They understand that children are small, good, and nice. They also mentioned that they are cute. And about family, it was interesting that they understood the social relations. So it was easy to see the structure of the families based on their ideas. For example, in Russia, usually grandparents and especially grandmas live together with children. But in Hungary, this kind of very typical family contains mother, father, and one child, usually, or 1.5, according to the statistics, so maybe 2. But grandparents are a member of the family, but almost no one mentioned grandparents because they don't live together. So they see their families who are living together. About play, they understand that what I mentioned, that only children play. So some conclusions. We could see the universalistic features. For example, according to them, a foreigner speaks, lives, and travels, but they were not sure if who are exactly foreigners. about the cultural and language-bound characteristics, we could see these so-called lacunas, so uniqueness of each languages and the cultures, what usually cannot translate it. For example, I'm sorry, I don't speak Korean. I try to in the future, but you might understand what kimono is in the Japanese language. You cannot translate it because hanbok is different from kimono. So you could, just understand the meaning, but there is no exact word for that in another language. We could see the globalization effects as well in both regions, and later we made it in Laos as well. In all of the three countries, they play with Lego and Duplo and some other cartoons, and brand names are widely recognized even in very different cultures. So we could see the globalization effects. And I mentioned the translation anomalies. It's very good to let children to elaborate about their own life. So for example, some of them mentioned that in good cases, okay, my father came home yesterday and he gave a bouquet of flowers to my mother, but also they mentioned if their parents were divorced. Regarding fiction and reality, they were not conscious about, they were not sure what is fiction and what is reality. When we asked them to talk about angels or devils, they were not sure these creatures exist or not. We, of course, need more research, but we begin to realize that children have vast knowledge about the world around themselves, even if they are 4 and 5 year olds. We can create certain research methods together, and we can understand more these situations. And just some fun. For example, foreigner is someone who's skin and 4 eyes. Devil is a person who haven't had a shower for a long time. A family is when mom goes party, and water contains vitamins. So they understand some concepts of the world, and I think it's a very good opportunity to work with them closely. And you can see here some selected bibliography. If you are interested in more detail, I can answer you hopefully. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your victory presentation. We are a little bit behind our schedule, but Dr. Mo, would you
my name is on the schedule, but we are running short of time, so I will do that too.
But do you have some comments or questions?
Well, yeah, I personally had a question for you actually. You mentioned that in the conclusion of your presentation, so I wonder if you could elaborate more.
And I reinforced the stereotypes of students from also services teachers for teaching integrated classroom, creating the opportunities there. So it's you need some side effects to treat is not practicing pedagogies for for students. So the simulations, the purpose of the simulation is giving the practice opportunity for getting ready to the actual classroom, but these other students are kind of decision-based students. So the critique is not giving the actual practice opportunity or side effect treating students as unusual. So based on that critique, I suggest some more studies on simulation, other purposes. Practice innovation is considered how these human voice is.
Is there anyone who have a comment on forces of the preservation? Yeah. I can share.
Thank you for the presentation. That was really interesting. I really enjoyed our thinking. Yeah. So I have two questions that are related. First one is you said you talked about the technology iconography, which I wasn't familiar with, but I was familiar with the kind of other methods like multimodal analysis and semiotic analysis from artificial. So I wondered, in those methods, you talked about the directionality, like you utilizing, sometimes I think the gaze and color, the positionality of the images. So those are all really important components when you analyze this visual artifacts. So I wondered about, as a person who used a multimodal analysis before for other works, I wondered how I can maybe utilize this new method, how can I apply that in my work.
I think what I mentioned from one of colleagues, serial analysis could be something extra, I think. And if you let them trust the intuitions, but I know it sounds weird within the research context, but there are some very nice research articles about this method, so I think that is something extra.
Similar to Dr. Chai's question about technology, and you were combining that with shoulder to shoulder methodology, which I found it to be kind of an interesting pairing because one deals with interpretive method, the other is much more ethnographic or phenomenological. And so I wondered how you came to combine these two interesting.
Actually, that's the next step. So, what we plan now is to make children analyze pictures. So if we could give them some paintings from other children in the past, that could be interesting. So that's the kind of next level to combine these two. So different perspectives, but very interesting. Merge.
And also those pictures we come down to. And the children being penalized. And those pictures are very familiar to me. When we look at the Latin schools. Latin school classroom during the medieval era or Reformation era. So they are very typical, stereotypical pictures, photos or pictures from during the conflict and then I mean these icons are very productive across the entire Europe.
Yes, and for example, zero tolerance of keeping a child is in the legislation only since the democratic changes on 89. For example, in my childhood, if a teacher hit a child or just send off from the classroom, she or he would be allowed to send us away or just leave us. So it was for a long time. So it's a kind of single class.
I have another last question. So you had in your second last study, you had children in Russia and Hungary who define their own childhood by reading them those 10 words related to childhood. So I understand the children are young, like 4 to 5 year old. But I think also I thought about maybe giving them those words also predefine what childhood is for them already. So I wondered, like, 'cause I know some other research they use like a portrait. Like you have your kids draw portrait, right? And then you analyze what that really represents. So I wondered about any bias, potential bias that.
Yes, we actually asked some questions, but I didn't mention that, for example, who is your friend, who are the members of your family, and that kind of questions. And later they asked them to not define what childhood is, but we started the sentence like, if I would ask you, my family is like, so we asked them some metaphors. So in that case, it's very similar to the method that you just mentioned. We try to not create some biases, but understand their thoughts.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, further comment or question? Yes.
So those students, the children are monolingual Hungarian.
Yes, yes, we are monolingual Hungarians, but again, another next level research could be to make with bilingual or trilingual. My previous researches are focused on bilingualism and multilingualism as well, so I really appreciate your works as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we have a lot of migrants as well.
Yes, recently since the Ukraine war, we have to open some Ukrainian schools, and in the kindergarten where we made this research, after the research, they open new course for Ukrainian children as well.
So those are the Hungarian minority in Ukraine.
And some Ukrainians, Hungarians and Ukrainians, and Russians, of course.
Okay. All right, I think this concludes our very compact, very highly compact and productive international academic symposium.
And from my university, I go to the South Carolina. So thank you very much.
Very nice of you. Oh, it's a long.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
For you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, come on.
Thank you very much. Small thing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So we can continue our discussion over dinner.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's welcome. Yeah.
So, well, you can.
Where?